Welcome back, everyone. I'm Kaya Carrington-Russell, Australian award-winning author of contemporary romance and kick-butt heroines in fantasy worlds. And I have a very special guest for you today. We are talking USA Today and #1 Amazon best-selling author, known for her sweet, funny, and feel-good romances. We are known for books such as Ignite and Irresistible. We are talking to the one and only Melanie Harlow. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Better now that you're on because I am very excited to delve into this interview. I have just started listening to Ignite myself and I'm a fan already.
I that is one of my readers, or I should say listeners. I hear about that book all the time. And I happen to love that narrator a lot too, just as a human. He's just a wonderful person, Stephen Dexter. So I am happy when anyone loves that one.
Well, I can't wait actually then to talk about audiobooks because I was going to say, do you select your narrators? But we'll get into that. We'll get into that. So then take me back to the start of your journey. How and why did you start writing and what did publishing look like for you the first time?
So I always thought I would write for children. I was going to write either like middle grade or YA. And I just sort of always knew I was going to do it. I didn't have a particular timeline. And then right after I had kids, I was like, okay, I've got some time off. I was teaching high school at the time. And I had some time off from teaching. I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's time. So I would get up at 5 a.m. and write between 5 and 7 while the kids hopefully were sleeping. The worst was if one of them woke up while I was writing, because then the time was over. So I hunted for an agent for a little bit, and I got some requests, but no takers. The My first one that I tried to write was like a YA contemporary romance. Then I tried a YA like time travel romance. Then I tried a YA historical. It was like set in the 1920s, and I got a lot of requests for it. So I felt like my writing was getting better, but they said they couldn't sell it. They were like, there's no market for this. And at the same time, this was roughly like 2012. I had a lot of friends who were starting to self-publish and they were having good success with it. And it was romance and it was, what new adult, which was the hot thing at the time. It was brand new. And I just was like, well, okay, I'll try it. So I took that historical and I upped the romantic content and I upped the ages of the characters a little bit so they weren't teenagers anymore. And I self-published that in 2013. And it was a good learning experience. I mean, turns out those agents were right. There's not really a market for historical, like, unless you're writing very specifically like Regency or, like Bridgerton kind of stuff. There's a huge market for that kind of historical, but what I was doing, not so much. So after I wrote that book and a follow-up, I switched over to contemporary romance starting in 2014 and never looked back.
That's incredible, though, that you were able to pivot so many times. That from the start, you looked at it with a business mindset as well and didn't take it personally when people weren't purchasing your books. That you went, okay, I just need to tweak a couple of things. I need to adjust the genre ever so slightly. It's incredible that you were able to do that, sure, because a lot of people might be quite scared about that initially.
And I think what it taught me was that you can write a great book. I mean, not that my early books were so great. They were not. But you can write a great book. And if it's not to market, you're gonna struggle. So I think it taught me the value of working to write to market. And it is often work, it is a job. If you want to sell books, you do have to think about the market. There's no
Yeah.
way around it.
When did you start noticing the snowball effect in your career that you were like, wow, I have a lot of readers. I'm a real author now. When was that?
Um, it was sort of a snowball. I didn't really have like a breakout massive, I had friends who did like their first book just struck gold. And my first contemporary romance, it did fine, it did well. I was happy with it. Books 2 and 3 did okay. And then I just sort of just kept going. I don't even know what, I just kept going. I had enough good feedback that I thought, okay, maybe I know how to do this. Maybe I can do this. And I'll tell you also, I was reading at the time, I read Wallbanger by Alice Clayton, and I read Tangled by Emma Chase. And those books and those authors kind of showed me like you could write light, funny, sexy romance and do well, because at the time, a lot of dark romance was doing really well. It was a lot of it was in the wake of 50 Shades. So, 2012, 13, 14, 15, even, things were still kind of, dark, very alpha dark men. And I wasn't writing that, but I got enough, I think, good feedback to think like there's a place for me.
Yeah.
So I just kept rolling with it.
Yeah. So you've now been doing this for a decade, which is kind of crazy but exciting. Did you
Yeah.
think when you started this journey that you would be where you're at now?
I don't think so. I mean, indie publishing was really still new at that time, I mean, I don't even know when Kindle first, maybe like 2010. I think I first got a Kindle in 2010. And I don't think I realized that people like me could put a book on a Kindle. I was still at the time thought, oh, you have to be traditionally published. And at the time, I was still hoping to write YA, and that you really did need to go traditional. But then, yeah, once 2000, I would say 2013, I just had so many friends doing it, and I was like, well, why not me? I could do that. And then, yeah, and it's still new. Like even today in 2022, like the pace of things, it changes so fast. So you do have to be able to sort of adapt quickly and be nimble. And that is both, I think, the gift of independent publishing, and also it's tough because just when you think, oh, I figured this out, this is how to do it. This is how you launch a book. This is how you market a book. It changes.
And it involves a lot, as you were saying, a lot of pivoting because it does change so quickly. I was actually having this conversation with somebody only recently about in all the markets and all the industries that you can be working in, it is really tough being, especially an independent author, because it's not only a business, you're also the creator. So do you do a lot of the work yourself when it comes to your business, or have you learnt to delegate, to grow a team and have that support?
So I've slowly learned to delegate and grow a team. I never wanted to be a businesswoman. I don't know any author that really was like, I mean, maybe there are a few that were like, I always wanted to dominate. I always wanted to be a girl boss. That was not me. So by about, I would say by 2015, so I'm thinking I was maybe like 6 or 7 books in, I finally hired like a promotions company. And the woman that I was working with was like, we need to get you an assistant because you can't manage. She wanted me to start a Facebook group and be on Goodreads and have a Facebook page. I might have already had a page, but I didn't know what to do with it. And start a newsletter and all these things. And I was like, I don't know how to do any of this. So that woman hooked me up with a personal assistant, a PA, virtual, that is still with me today. I just got very, very lucky. And in the beginning, I remember, I think I paid her $30 a week. And there were some weeks where I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even make like $30. Um, so I just, and gradually as I got more successful, I could increase and pay her more. And that was one of the first things that I did. So it is worth investing in a team. I mean, I say team, there's really just, there was only 2 of us for a really long time. Later in 2015, I did hire like a more of a publicist, and then eventually hired someone to help me with audio. And then I hired a second assistant. And then I hired someone to manage social media for me. So it is slowly grown, But if you find someone that understands you, understands your brand, enjoys your books, and you trust them, intuitively, invest in that person. Take the time to train them. It's worth it.
I love that. That's great advice. Let's talk a little bit about Tempt. So that only recently released, and that
Mhm.
cover is very hot. So tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind that, and for those who haven't yet read it, what it's about and why they should.
I'm trying to think if I have one. Actually, I had two. So
Cover is
yes, it's a beautiful photo by Wander. And then I have, oh, there's sort of a glare. I have alternative cover with no human on it in case anyone, but I don't know who wouldn't like this human. Um, so Tempt was the final book in a next generation series. So I had an original 5 book series called the Cloverleaf Farms series that I wrote and released 2019, 2020. And then this series, the heroines were the daughters of one of the single dads from that series. And readers had been asking me to write a second generation. They liked the world and they wanted to go back there. And I understood that. But I was like really reluctant to do this because the math of it, I was like, well, what year is it? How much time has gone by? I don't understand. So I made them promise not to do any math. And I said I would write the series. So this one is the final book in the series. It was in the original series, book one, it was a single dad of 3 daughters, and this daughter was the oldest one. And readers were really waiting for her. And I knew I had to give her something really special. And I am a sucker for an age gap romance. So I was like, okay, I want to do an age gap. And my readers had been begging me to write a plus size heroine for years. And I was always, again, reluctant to do it. But I took a lot of time. I asked in my reader group on Facebook, I said, would anybody be willing to talk to me about writing a plus size heroine? If you are plus size and you would like to see a plus size heroine on the page, I want to write one realistically, authentically. And I really would like to get some firsthand experience because I didn't have that. And I had a ton of volunteers and they were amazing. I emailed them questions. I printed out like 25 pages of notes and they really helped me make her just I loved writing that character. And the book wasn't even about her being plus size, but it had affected her in certain ways. And so I just wanted that I wanted the language, how they wanted to hear a character like her described. And they would point out things when I would send them chapters and be like, how does this sound? Does this sound like she would say it? And one of them, in one scene, I had her in a corset. And one of them said, that seems kind of like restricted. So we changed the language of it because I didn't care. I wanted it to be respectful and sensitive and authentic to that experience. And that's not one that I had personally. So I needed their voices in my head. And that was something different about writing this book. And the other thing, um, I write a certain kind of romance and it can get repetitive. You're writing the same kinds of stories, boy meets girl, there's a reason they can't be together, they have to figure it out. And so I'm always looking for ways to freshen up the tropes or for a trope that I haven't done yet. And I read Praise by Sarah Kate. I don't know if you've ever read it. So it was this really fantastic, hot ex's dad romance. And I thought, now there's a trope that would be really hard for me to do because I write lighter, sweeter, more heartwarming. And I thought that's a good challenge. How could I make this work for a Melanie Harlow romance? So I thought about it and thought about it. And then I was like, okay, I think I could make it work and it would still be light enough and funny enough. And so I just tried to think of a way to put my spin on it. The heroine was a wedding planner and she ended up planning a wedding for her ex and she gets introduced to his father at the rehearsal dinner, and she realizes that she has met this father before in yeah, right. So it was a ton of fun to write, and I really loved it.
What I love too, so I stalk you everywhere. I like to be thorough with my research. But I'm also a part of your group on Facebook, and I love that on the disclaimer of your second generation, you've put in the dedication. Please do not do the maths on this. I love that. That's so funny. It's very, very intimate though to also have that kind of relationship with your readers where you could ask them for that narrative as well. And I think that's really incredible that you really did the research and you contributed in that way. I think it makes that book a little bit more special, even. How many books have you written so far?
I think I have 29 solo titles, and then I have some co-writes too. Yeah, I release about 3 times a year. There was one year where I wrote 4 books, but it was 2020, and I think it was lockdown, there was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I just had more writing time. So that has not happened since 2020. So I think 3 books a year is pretty much my rate. Um, and so yeah, I think Tempt was number 29. And thank you for the compliment about the reader group. I love that reader group. I don't know, I just got very lucky that it grew quickly, and everyone is always like, I just never get drama in there. I don't know. It's like a testament to my readers. It just never gets I mean, I can count on one hand the number of times I've had to go like, oh, that comment is a little bit unkind. I might have to, take that off or whatever. It's just always been so my happy place, on the internet. And I did tell them they're not allowed to do any math. That's true. But because I said, like, if it comes down to either the math is going to work out or the story is going to be better, I'm going to choose the story every time. So if you catch a mathematical error, I'm sorry, but the story won out
Yeah.
if I needed to make the math a little bit fuzzy.
I think though that group as well speaks volumes about the environment that you've created too. Like you're very in the best way communicative is what I want to say. Like you, when the other day you put up a post as to why you've created alternative covers aside from your original covers with the men, and it really helps explain to readers to your decision in that. And it's kind of like, sorry, not sorry, it's still happening, but this is why. And I think that's really inviting for a lot of readers to understand, wow, this is a business too. This is why they've had to do that. There's a lot of thought behind that's happening.
Romance is very emotional, and we get attached to the characters. We get attached to the way a book looks with the cover. And when an author changes something like a cover, it can feel personal. And I do understand that. And I think because it's so emotional and personal, it's easy to forget that an author is also a business person who needs to grow by selling books, and the market changes. Cover trends change just like fashion trends or hairstyles or music or whatever. So I wanted to point that out in a way that was like, it's not that we don't care. We loved those covers too, and we're not abandoning the readers that we've had from the start, but we do need to also grow. And what's better than having more people to talk about the books that you love? So yeah, I did want to address it. I will say, because I have seen around Facebook, and in my group too, some dismay and sort of reluctance to embrace the new covers, because they'll say, I don't understand why an author would change. I like the old ones better. But the truth of it is, like I said, the trends change. And also for advertising, it can be very difficult to advertise a shirtless man on a book, or a couple. Like, for example, let me see. So this is a cover of mine that I love. I could not run ads for this book because of the positioning of them. The pose is just, you know, um, it's a
It
hot,
does.
hot pose, yeah, and his
It
hand on her leg and everything. So I kept having to ask my designer to move up the stuff on the bottom, like it was creeping up higher and higher on all these books. But realistically, a business person needs to advertise, and I couldn't keep putting couples on my books when every single time my ads were being rejected. It was just I was exhausted by the fight. I was like, okay, I can't do it anymore. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of different things that go into how to package a book. It isn't just what would be the most beautiful or what would my readers love best. I have to balance that.
And your branding is very much on point. I do want to, which we will talk about because but your branding is very much on point. It comes in a really nice
Thank
package.
you.
You know a Melanie Harlow book when you see one. And
That's the goal.
yeah, you've kind of like, you don't need my approval, but you've accomplished that hands down. And one thing that I do love about you as well is, as we're talking about readers, you have a very thorough understanding of demand from your readers and what they're after. You've been on many panels, many interviews discussing just this. I watched your IncasCon one because I'm a stalker, but I'm not really. But
That
I mean, you were explaining to everyone, let your readers eat cake, understand sort of what they're after. And did you always have that understanding, or is that something that you've learnt through your career?
it's something I learned, and it's something that it takes a while. When you first start writing, it's almost better just to put everything else outside. Like think about one reader maybe, or just think about the story you really want to write. I mean, writing is very hard. I think that thinking about reader expectations comes with time because you have to build the readers first. I had to have a group of readers to with expectations. When you're first starting out, you're still getting a feel for who your audience is. So I would say, and I think I talked about this at Inkers and then at Novelists Inc. this year and at 20 Books. It was like 2018. It was 2018. So I had been publishing for about 5 years. I was maybe like 3 or 4 series in. And I was, I am a student of craft. I love craft books. I'm a learner. I I knew the books were written well. I wasn't getting worse as a writer, but like there were all these erratic ups and downs. And I was like, well, what am I doing wrong? And I just had this feeling that the marketing and sort of the something was uneven. I wasn't doing a good enough job meeting the expectations and then communicating to readers, this is a book that you will love. So that 2018 is when I really decided, okay, I need to study marketing also. I need to understand this. Writing is great, but publishing is a business. And I need to learn what it is my customers want from me. Then I need to plan how I'm going to give it to them again and again and again and make it feel new every time. And then how I'm going to communicate to them, this is a book that you're going to love every single time. So it took some time.
That's incredible. Now we can learn from you, which is great.
Yeah,
That's
right.
like a lot of us.
And I say those things and I'm standing up there or I'm talking to you. I have an author group as well. And I know sometimes when I'm saying these things, it's not something that's just going to sink in because I say it. It's going to be something that an author experiences and goes, oh, that's what she meant. Sometimes it's too early to hear that. And then because that happens to me all the time, I hear advice and I'm like, no. And then, 2 years down the road, I'm like, oh, now I get it. Now I get what that person meant.
Speaking of your author group as well, because that one's on Facebook as well, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yes, I know
Mhm.
because I'm also a part of it. You're like, oh, just
Yeah.
pretend, just pretending. But and I took your survey the other day too. So and I adore that group because again, good vibes in there, and it's really communicative as well. And I love that you share your knowledge. And I'm a little bit curious with your guest speaking. Have you always been confident on stage, or was that something that you had to learn and adapt to as well?
I have a lot of stage fright, believe it or not. I grew up dancing. Um, and so I had some experience, like being in front of an audience. But I do get very nervous each time. So I'm glad if it doesn't show, but I get very nervous each time, but I also, because I know that I get so nervous, I prepare a lot, a lot, a lot. I do a ton of research. I rehearse. Um, I try to think of what questions I might get asked, although authors ask such great questions. I'm always like, oh, I didn't think of that. But yeah, so it is. I was a teacher also. I taught high school for 5 years. So I had that experience also, and I taught dance for years also. So I do have experience being up in front of people, but I do still get nervous.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't come across at all. You seem very
Good.
so well done. Well, then let's talk about why we're here in the first place. Let us talk about single dads and small town authors. What do you have any advice for anyone who is wanting to write with this genre and perhaps reader expectations as well?
Sure. So, anybody who wants to write small town, first definitely read Small Town. Small Town, the great thing about Small Town is that there's so many different heat levels now. It's not all sweet and clean. You can find that and it sells. But then there's like, mid-level, and there's probably even some like super high, steamy small town romance. But so pick a lane that you think you're interested in writing in, and then read what is popular in that lane. Look at how it's packaged. And I think quickly you will see, you will learn the promise of that premise. So in a small town, everybody knows everybody. You're going to have a lot of family dynamics. There's, gossip and rumors, and it's hard to keep a secret, and everybody knows everybody else's business. um the town becomes almost like a character in the story. So and the more you read, the more you'll understand, okay, these are the conventions of small town romance. Often you'll have like a return to hometown. That's a really common trope with small towns. Someone left and then they're coming back to either start over, or maybe they made mistakes and they're coming home like kind of tail between their legs. Or maybe someone never left. Those are great stories too. You have great opportunities for second chances in small towns if somebody left and then came back. Secrets that were buried and come out again. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities in small town. And single dad, I really love to write single dads. I'm getting to the point where I'm like, how am I going to write another one? Like, how am I going to do it this time to make it feel new? In fact, that's what I'm thinking about right now. But you have to, you want to think about, okay, a single dad, like you want to show him with his kids. I mean, that's the joy of it, right? Showing him interacting with his kids. Probably the single dads that get the most, actually, I think I always write them with daughters, which is natural for me because I have two daughters. So I see my husband with our daughters all the time. So that dynamic is really familiar to me. But Ignite is one of my most popular. I think Ignite is probably on track to be my best-selling book ever. And what readers liked about that book, I think, was that he was this kind of grumpy firefighter guy who had been through a divorce and everything. But he was really sweet to those girls. And I think that readers just really love to see, even with the grumpiest, growliest hero, that he's got that soft spot for those kids.
I love watching you light up as you talk about this, by the way. As soon as I'm like, right, small towns, single dads, you have just lit up. It's like
It
Christmas.
is it is my thing. It is my happy place. The hardest thing about a single dad is like, this sounds terrible, by the way. What do you do with the mom? Like she's obviously not in the picture anymore, so do you kill her off? Do you Did she leave? Is she still around? Is it amicable? Is it contentious? So that for me is the hardest part about writing a single dad romance because I don't like a lot of angsty drama. Uh, I don't like writing characters. I shouldn't say I don't like writing characters that aren't nice because mean characters are really fun to write. Um, but I don't think my readers particularly enjoy that kind of drama. So but that's probably the trickiest thing is what do you do with that other woman?
That'll be the question after this. Everyone
I
comes, what do you do with the other woman? Do you know how many people will just be like, kill her off?
100%. I know. And I think I am going to kill her off in the next book, but very nicely. She's not a bad person. Like we're going to nicely kill her off painlessly.
Let's talk a little bit about branding because, as I said, yours is amazing. I fell in love with your website. I can't even, I just look at you and think, wow, Melanie, I want to be you when I grow up. And so
Uh,
everything's,
you can.
oh my goodness, yes. It's just all where it should be. Even across your social medias, it's consistent as well. When you look at your books, each series, they're all the same. Did you Are these things that you learnt along the way, or did you have a game plan at the start? Or did you have to? I've noticed a lot of authors have had to, a couple of years into their career, completely refurbish and overhaul. Did you have that experience?
So some things I just got lucky. For example, this author font, I chose it early on. I loved it. I thought it was very feminine and pretty. It's a little bit old fashioned. It has sort of like to me like a mid-century vibe to it, which suits me. And so I just lucked out that I chose something then that still works for my branding now. Um, and then as far as the like my logo with the martini glass, that I'm trying to think that might have even been like left over from when I was writing the 1920s historical because it was all about like speakeasies and like prohibition. But I kind of again just lucked out that it ended up being something that I still love the look of it. That color pink that's all over my website, I still love it. Um, but other than that, I do think that I've gone through a couple of iterations of branding. My current website was very intentional. I knew that I read this book called This Is Marketing by Seth Godin, and this was in that summer of 2018 was when I read that because I was trying to learn what is marketing, what is a brand. Like I didn't really know what a brand was. I thought it was a logo. Like if you had a Nike swoosh, like that's a brand. Turns out no. That swoosh would be totally meaningless if Nike hadn't done a lot of other work to communicate to you when you see that a lot of things. And one of the things that Seth Godin says in that book is Nike doesn't have a hotel. But if it did, you know exactly what that hotel would look like. And so I think with companies with really strong branding, I always think that they don't make a hotel, but if they did, when you walked into the lobby, you would know what it should look like. So when I was thinking about what I wanted my website to look like, I wanted it to have a sense of place that suggested what it would be like to live in my books. I wanted the world of Melanie Harlow to be obvious. I wanted readers to come to it, and if they looked at that homepage and went, I love this. This is a place for me. These are books for me. And it was also on my homepage of my website, I do have one little, I think, mock up where you can see my latest book, but it was a conscious decision not to have like a carousel of my covers because I wanted it to be about Melanie Harlow as a brand rather than just this book or this series. I wanted, and because I think if you like one of my books, you will probably like the other 28 because there's something in there, for all my readers. Like there's only one book that is wildly off brand. And then there's the historicals, but we don't count those. Um, but other than that, I just wanted to create that sense of place. So that was the goal and that was intentional there.
You definitely have, because when you go onto your website, you have things like your recipes on there, you have family trees, you have there was something else that I was like, wow, I need to get that. Just your website in general. But you're already immersed in that world without, if you haven't even read a book yet, you know what to expect, which is why I thought it was so clever.
That's the goal. So that if you go there, and there's plenty of people who might stop by there and be like, no, this looks too light, too sweet, it won't be for me. And that's fine. That's totally fine. That's the goal. I didn't write a book for that person, and that's okay. I think one of the things that I say to authors a lot is you have to get comfortable saying, my books are not for everybody. I mean, there is such a tendency to want to be like, but everybody will like my books. My books are for everybody. And that's like, your books are amazing, but they're not for everybody. I always want to say that. So, and then it's counterintuitive, but the narrower you make that lane, like I am marketing to this one person, you're going to find more readers because they're going to talk about your books, and people who come there are going to be like, oh my gosh, this is a book for me. And they're going to go and read all 29 of them. That reader is worth more than if I'm like, oh, but for example, like Step Brothers are hot right now, or Why Choose is so hot right now. I got to write one of those immediately. It might sell to a lot of different people, but I don't have anything else in my backlist for them. They're going to go on to the next, to somebody else. So I would rather attract fewer people who will dive deep, if that makes sense.
Makes sense, 100%. I love that because it very much is that. Because I know there's a lot of, different things that work for different people, but there is that conversation, stay in your lane, try different genres, try different pen names. Do you think you would ever do anything like that? Or do you think right now this is your focus and you're happy there?
For right now, this is my focus, and I'm happy. It's working for me. Um, there are certainly authors who, like, I'm a huge Elena Johnson fan. I think she's incredible. I think she's brilliant. And she writes very quickly, produces very quickly, and manages multiple pen names. There's a lot of authors that can do that. I knew that wasn't the way for me. I wasn't, it just wasn't the way for me. So for me, it made more sense to create the backlist of one type of book and stick to it. And so that's the advice that I give when somebody comes to me, because I assume if they're coming to me for advice, they might be a person more like me who I just can't write fast. I'm not an idea factory. I wish I was. um, so yes, there definitely are all kinds of ways you can do it, but for me right now, this is working. The danger for me is constantly worrying how to keep it fresh when I'm doing one thing essentially. So, and that's another reason why I think it does take me longer. If I could allow myself to write like more of a thriller over here, and then a romance, and then a women's fiction, and then a middle grade, maybe I would be faster, probably not. But because I'm constantly trying to think of ways to tell good stories that are compelling and fresh and interesting, it takes me longer.
Yeah. Do
Um,
you
but I would like to write something different sometimes. Yeah.
watch your space? We still got a plenty of years.
Right.
What
Yeah.
what does your 9 to 5 look like then? You said prior to us hopping on here, you're a very structured person. So I'm curious as to what the day today for Melanie Harlow looks like.
So on a school day, I'm up at about 6:30, and then my kids are in high school now. I'm getting them out the door. So once I get back from getting them out the door, getting them to school, my workday is between 8 and 3. So those are my working hours. I have to fit in my words, any like business admin stuff that I'm doing, um, running my Facebook groups. I'm in and out of there every day pretty much. And then at 3 o'clock, I go pick up my younger daughter from school, come home. I go work out in the afternoon, come home, make dinner, do household things. So between 8 and 3, and I'm pretty strict about that. My brain, I don't know what it is. It shuts off. I can't write at night.
I'm the
And
same.
then I go to bed ridiculously early. Like I would be happy to go up to bed at 7:30 because I read for a couple of hours. And I like my light off by 10 o'clock.
That's amazing. I love that you have that structure though. So when you're writing, we did briefly discuss it a little bit before, but how where do you sit on plotting and being a pantser?
So there are certain things that I need to have in place before I start a book. I can't just sit down and be like, I don't know where this is going, but it's just going to be a fun ride. I need to know certain things, and it's usually all character based. I need to know who my hero and heroine are, kind of where they come from, what their life looks like now. I need to know why am I starting the book where I'm starting it? Like, what's the right spot? Readers want to get in and they want to learn about the characters, but they don't want an entire backstory. They want to feel like you brought them in not a moment too soon or too late. So the beginning of a book is really critical. So I need to figure out where does the story start? And then I know kind of those internal journeys that they're going to have to take over the course of the book. And I usually try to think about what is the dark moment going to look like? Because that's the hardest part for me to write. I hate it. Because you just did all of that work to get them to that point where they're going to maybe possibly blow it. And because I write contemporary romance with no suspense elements, I don't have any external elements that are going to do that heavy lifting for me. There's no mass murderers, kidnappers, like no Armageddon. Uh, so it's got to come from a internal emotional choice to possibly walk away from whatever it is, or well, it's love. They're going to choose, like they're going to potentially make the wrong decision. So I need to know in my head what that's going to look like. It could change, but I got to have some idea.
That makes sense.
So yeah, with those things kind of in place, I'm a big fan of Lisa Cron's Story Genius. And in Story Genius, she talks a lot about the origin stories of each character. And I do some mapping that out, even if it doesn't make it onto the page in the book. I'm high context. We talked a little bit about Clifton strengths before we started. So I'm number one achiever, but I'm number two context, which means I really need to know a lot of what's happened up to the point where I start the story, even if it doesn't make it into the book. So it's not plotting, but I still do a lot of pre-writing work before I type, like Once Upon a Time.
Yeah, I love that. I want to talk a little bit about self-love. So you are a USA Today and an Amazon #1 best-selling author, which is fantastic. And I want to know when you found out you were on those lists, and most importantly, how you celebrated.
That's a really fun question. So when I first hit USA Today, I'll never forget where I was. I was at a Romantic Times conference. It was 2015, and I was sitting in, I think, an audiobook talk that Liliana Hart was giving. And I got a message from Lauren Blakely because she was kind of mentoring me at the time. And somehow she had access to the list because she's Lauren Blakely and she's magic. And she told me, and I think I just got choked up and, my stomach started flipping around. It just felt incredible. It just felt amazing. That I could do something like that. It didn't feel real. And then I know it's kind of a strange week to be talking about it because they just got rid of the USA Today list this week. So it's a little bit, I hope that they'll replace it with something. The landscape has changed a lot. So what, best-selling book, is that just number of sales at this point, or is there a different way we can talk about books? I don't know. But anyway, at that time, it did feel really good. And then I hit number one. That was really fun. The first time that I did it was in 2020 with a single dad book. And I was there for like a couple of hours on like a Monday morning. Yes. And it was around the time that Obama's memoir was out, I think. And so I like edged in front of Obama for like an hour. It was really
Screenshot.
funny. I did. That was really fun. And then when Tempt released last month, that's the longest I've ever been at number one. I think I was there like 4 days or something, and it was just a huge kick every time I would go and check and see if it was still there, and it was still there. I was like, this is so crazy. Yeah, it is. Not gonna lie, it's a lot. That's a lot of fun.
How did you celebrate?
Um, You know what? Probably when I hit USA Today, I was at that convention. I'm sure there were many toasts at the bar that night. And then when Tempt came out, it was Thanksgiving week, and so I was with family. It was just really really fun. Yeah, I think I just probably internally celebrated
Yeah,
myself, raised a wine glass.
that's awesome. What an incredible achievement. Then what is the goal? What is the dream that you're chasing for Melanie Harlow?
Gosh, I would I would love the process to get easier. I wish that I didn't panic every time I sat down to write a book, because I still do. I still think like, well, what if I can't do it? I know I've done it 29 times, but what if this is the one time I'm not going to be able to do it? So I would love to somehow grow more confident that I can write a book. I don't know why, but I still have that fear every single time. Like, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or like I've been faking it. I don't know. I don't know what that is. But I would love to keep growing as a writer. I would love to keep growing in terms of my readership. Um, and then I think eventually it would be a great challenge for me to write something different. Maybe try traditional publishing, reach a different audience, something like that. I would love to write. I often get asked, like, well, do you ever want to see your books become movies? And I really don't, because I think my books are very internal. Like I was saying earlier, they don't have a lot of external action or excitement. And I would be very afraid that people would watch it and be like, this is boring. Like, because I think my skills as a writer are often what the character is thinking, like taking now, there certainly are great adaptations of, books to movies that aren't action packed. But I've never been like, I really want to see my book as a movie. I would like to write something to see it on screen, but I think I would write it differently. I don't know what that is yet. So maybe that idea is going to come to me in a dream. I don't know. So I do think it would be fun to write something for TV or movies. So that would be on my dream list.
That's so cool. I can't wait to see when that show slash movie comes out because I believe that.
We'll
What?
throw a big career party. Yes.
Yes, please, and we'll celebrate. We may not remember the celebration, but it'll be a good night.
Okay. But we're gonna do it.
What are your three top marketing tips?
What I've learned to do for marketing is you have to think about it before you write the book, and it's not easy. But I've realized that what sells a book are the tropes, especially when it's not your name. Eventually, your name is going to sell a lot of books. My name will sell books for me at this point, but it wasn't always like that. Think about those graphics you see everywhere now with the arrows, like, friends to lovers, small town, single dad, he falls first. That's marketing right there. So if you can, when you're about to write a book, list out 8 things that you could say on a graphic with those arrows. That's your marketing right there. And then get that, then write a book about those things. Because the worst thing ever is writing a book and then realizing, like, well, this is a great story, but I don't know how to describe it. I don't know why a reader would pick this up. The tropes are going to be your best friends. So think about them before you write the book. And then research, look around, know who your comp authors are. Like I said earlier when we were chatting, like Alice Clayton and Emma Chase, they were writing hot, funny, heartwarming romance. And I was like, that's what I want to write. So I think their readers would also like my books. So I understood the tone I needed to take. I didn't want to copy them, obviously, but I understood the tone that I wanted, the POV that I wanted. I understood what my covers should look like, what my blurbs should sound like. So do your homework, do your research, go to the, Kindle store or whatever store you use, and read in the lane you want to write in, and pay attention. Look at their covers, look at their blurbs, look at how they're doing what they're doing. And then aim for those readers as best you can. And then I would say, I mean, as people have mixed feelings about TikTok, I certainly do too, but right now it is free. If I were starting out now, I would learn the platform and really try to dedicate a little bit of time each day. That's your marketing time, that's your investment. Before you have an ad budget, you need to find things to do that are free, that are going to get the word out. And wow, nothing gets the word out like TikTok. It's amazing. Like, we did not have this in 2013, 2014. We were like throwing money at Facebook ads, trying to figure them out. So that is such a great, I know it's not everyone's favorite thing, but it is really great for selling books.
One thing that I do want to raise is your blurbs. They're incredible. And I would really like to know where you learnt the art of writing a fantastic blurb, because it's very difficult for a lot of authors. And I briefly wanted to mention too, when we're talking about tropes, what I find interesting is it kind of goes hand in hand with TikTok, because I don't think I've been publishing since 2014 as well, and I don't think tropes have ever been any more prominent than when TikTok really niched down and really started selling those tropes and made us realize how quickly and how important they were. It's the landscape's changed completely. But yes, blurbs. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I spent years being stupid about tropes and trying to avoid them because I thought they were overdone, they were cliche. But I didn't. That was stupid of me. I was ignorant. Like, you need to embrace them. You need to put a fresh spin on them. And I'm going to get into this about blurbs in a second, but they are familiar and they sell the story. Before a reader knows who Melanie Harlow is, if she reads a blurb and goes, oh, it's enemies to lovers, I love those kinds of books. That's what's going to sell it, or Marriage of Convenience or whatever. And there are lists of tropes that you can get. And then there's also a book, I think the author is Amy Lane, Crafting Category Romance, and she does such a great job of breaking down, like, there are situational tropes like enemies to lovers, friends to lovers. There's place tropes like small town. There's career tropes like firefighter, those kinds of things. So there's all kinds of different, tropes. Grumpy Sunshine is a trope. So, but here's the thing about the blurb. It's not enough to make it clear that this is a single dad nanny romance in the blurb. You have to be specific. Why should a reader pick up your single dad nanny romance? So sometimes I think, first of all, get the tropes in the top 4 or 5 lines. That is one thing that I tell everyone. Get the tropes up top. Readers are mostly female. I'm going to generalize a little bit here. So other than the tropes, the next most important thing is that hero. Why is a reader going to be, why they're going to fall in love with your hero? They want to identify with the heroine and they want to fall for the hero. Now, I write male-female romance. My readers are, 90+% women who are looking for a hero to fall in love with. So I realize that what I say is also kind of specific to what I write. But they're coming to a romance to fall in love. So you got to make it clear, why are they going to be attracted to the hero? What kind of story this is? What is the conflict? Why can't these two be together? What's at stake? A great resource for blurbs is Elena Johnson's Writing Killer Cover Copy. Highly, highly recommend that book. I see a lot of blurbs that are, they'll deliver the tropes up top, and then the rest of it is just vague. It's too vague. And I'm like, I don't know why I should read this book. I could choose any number of workplace, grumpy boss romances. What is it about this one that's funny or dramatic or angsty? Like, be specific. A lot of times authors are like, but then that's giving it away. Don't care, give it away. Like, don't hold back. You have 3 seconds to grab them. Okay, don't hold back. And then a lot of times too, this is the last thing I'll say, a blurb sometimes reads as if the author wants to hear this about her book. It reads like a dream review. Like, it's full of floaty feelings and dramatic passion. And I'm like, great, but why? What's the conflict here? I don't know what this book is about. Like, I understand like this is dreamy and he's swoony, but what's the story? What is the story? So Writing Killer Cover Copy. Everybody go get it, read it.
Yeah, honestly, these are great tips. And you've also dropped a lot of awesome resources in this interview, which is fantastic as well. And what I love, going to be the caption on the top of this is give it, just give it your all, which is basically, I think, was something along those lines. You're like, just give it up, give them everything, done, let's do it. So we are talking about our swoon-worthy narrators before. So how do you go about, what's your process for audiobooks?
So I have what I wish it was, and then I have what it actually is. So I do my own audio. So when I first started out, I did nothing. Then as I got, a little bit more popular, I sold audio rights to companies like Audible or Tantor, and they produce the audio, and then I, get a royalty check through my agent for those books. It's very small. But the problem is that producing your own audio is very expensive. So it's not something that an author can do until she's more established. But I would say, as soon as you start making some money and you're like, ooh, what do I do? How do I invest in myself? Doing audio is a great investment. Choose your most popular book. Your most popular book. So there are several companies that I've worked with in the past, and they usually need about 6 weeks lead time. So I give them the PDF, the script, and then 6 weeks later they will deliver audio files, which can take, up to 10 days to upload and be approved at ACX. So ideally I would give myself like a 2-week window there. So now we're talking 8 weeks. This finished, edited book to the narrators 8 weeks ahead of time. And I just have not been able to do that for at least a couple of years now. I'm running too late. So usually, like, Tempt released on November 21st. I think I'm gonna have audio maybe like next week. It's just, yeah, it just took a long time because I ran over on my deadline. But a lot of authors are way far ahead. That's fantastic. So the best thing to do is to get ahead, because the farther you are ahead, you'll have your choice of narrators too. I'm always like, who's available? Like, who can do this? Who had a cancellation in their schedule, or who could possibly fit me in? I've been super lucky because I've gotten some really great narrators. Actually, the 2 times I've gotten Sebastian York were like accidental, like last minute, and he's a super popular, very talented narrator. And there are some that I'm like, oh, I'll never be able to get them because they're booked out so far. but I'm not an audiobook listener. So I ask around in my groups like, hey, who are your favorite narrators? And I try to compile a list of names and I give a list of names and I'm like, is anyone available? Sometimes I get lucky. And then sometimes this is how I found Stephen Dexter, the narrator of Ignite. He was sort of new and up and coming. And the audio producer was like, I've got someone who's new and up and coming. I think he's going to have a huge career. This was a few years ago. And I was like, great, he's hired. um, and he's amazing. He's done several books for me. I absolutely adore him. So yeah, you never know, you know. It's going to take a while for your audio to earn out. Even my audio books, like it's not going to have like an ebook, obviously, like you have your editing costs and your cover and all that. You have a successful ebook that it'll, you know, pay you back and you'll get profits on that right away. An audiobook is so expensive to produce. You know, usually for me, my books are between 80 and 90,000 words. We're talking a 9-hour audio book. You know, that's $4,000 to $5,000, you know, so that's a, you know, that's a good investment. And you're not going to get it back in a day or a week. It's going to take some time. So
Yeah.
you do have to be patient with it, but it's a great investment if you can afford it.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, have you touched translations?
So I have a foreign agent that sells those rights for me. So yeah, my books are translated into I don't know how many languages now, maybe 12 to 15 different languages. But the way that I do it, I in fact like some of these books like are in different languages. I have all of these books and I don't know what to do with them. So I wish I knew more of my like, you know, foreign language readers, because the publishers are so nice to send me all these foreign editions and they're beautiful, but I don't know what to do with them. Um, I have not done my own translations only because when I first started working with my foreign agent, no one was doing their own translations. This is like 20, I think I got my first foreign offer early in 2017, maybe 2016. I think 2017. And no one was doing their own foreign translations yet. If I were coming up now, I probably would, you know, try it myself. Why not? There are translators. People are. It's a good investment of your income. But at this point, I love my foreign agents. I have established relationships with publishers. It's not, I don't think it would be a smart move for me to start doing it on my own and jeopardize the relationships with the publishers that I already have because they would not like that.
And that's great. That's
um,
that you create these kind of relationships as well. So it's fantastic that you have that in place for you.
I think I mean, I'm a believer in investing in relationships too. So you know, you can't always say, well, what will make me the most money like right away. I think sometimes you do have to look big picture, like, okay, you know, I've established these relationships. It's not to say I wouldn't do my own translations in the future. I think it's smart, but for me right now, it's not the right move.
Perfect. So I have a little game. It's called Speed Dating with an Author. I've lit a candle, I've created ambience, but basically what it is 5 rapid questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
Clumsiest.
Yeah.
Um, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Last weekend I was dancing. I'm actually a good swing dancer and I was dancing with my partner and we went to do this like air flip and somehow it went wrong and he dropped me. Like I went down hard on the floor. It was so embarrassing. And I was like it was hideously embarrassing. Yes, I was on the floor. I was all like banged up the next day too. Yeah.
Did you get up and start dancing straight away? Like,
Yes, I had to. I had to get up. my partner like pulled me up and he was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay, let's finish the song." I was like, "Okay." Like we had been hired to come and dance at this function. Like we were on display. Like it wasn't just we were just dancing for fun. Like we were being paid. We were there as professionals.
Oh my,
It was so embarrassing. Like it was the most embarrassed I've ever been.
have you had many falls like that before in your dancing career?
No,
It's
no.
like it happened just for this interview. No, I'm kidding. I'm
I
kidding.
know. So it was really terrible. It was really terrible. Like when he and I've been doing this for like 20 years. Like when we were first learning all these like fancy moves and stuff in my parents' backyard, like I would fall, but no one was watching. Like I have never had such an embarrassing thing happen like in front of a crowd. It was terrible.
That's amazing. But you got, yeah, you got to keep
I
going. You got up
I
and did
had no
it.
choice. I'm sure my face was like flaming red. Um, but it was awful. So yeah, that's probably the worst clumsy moment. Yeah.
What are three words that best describe you?
Three words that best describe me. Um, I will say kind. Kindness is very important to me, and I try to always make decisions and come from a place of kindness. I will say I know it's not going to sound like it because I've been talking nonstop for an hour, but I'm fairly quiet. Like I can go really long, long, long periods of time without talking.
Amazing.
Or being alone in a room and not noticing. I'm very introverted. Um, and then I will say I'm fairly like disciplined. I think I'm disciplined. Like I'm good at sticking to a routine and following through on things.
Who has been your favorite character to write and why?
I get asked this a lot, and it's very hard to choose. Um, so I'm gonna say my favorite heroine to write was probably Margot from a book called After We Fall. She just had this very like polished upbringing, and one day when the book starts, she just has this terrible day and she just loses it. And she just has that day where like she just can't take another minute of being this polished put together person. And she just loses it, and then she goes and falls in love with a farmer, very different from her sophisticated upbringing. So that was a really fun story to write, and I loved the character of Margot. She was fun.
What is the song that best describes you?
This a song that best describes me. um oh my goodness, I love I've been really into like music from like the 70s lately. I don't know why. But um I'll go with a Queen song, maybe like Don't Stop Me Now. We'll go
Oh,
with Queen.
yes, appropriate. I love it. What is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not a lot of people know about?
A unique talent. Well, I'm a pretty good dancer, except for last weekend when I fell. But other than that, like I am a pretty good dancer. Like I could, if someone was like if certain kind of like swing music was playing, I could go out on the dance floor with anyone and follow and be pretty good at it.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's cool. Do you upload any videos or anything like that to your reader group?
Of dancing. You know what? I've never done that. I probably have some somewhere that I don't do it as much as I used to. Like clearly now I'm in my 40s and I'm home with kids all the time, but like when I was in my 20s, and it was the, late 90s and swing dancing was like really popular at the time. That's when I learned. There might be some old videos. I'll have to dig them out.
That'd be cool to see because it's the same thing as you're talking about your books when you talk about swing dancing. You just light up like Christmas again.
Yeah, I really do love it when I can stay on my feet.
I have had so much fun today. Where do we find you? What's coming out? And yeah, what do we need to know?
So my website is melanieharlow.com. That's an easy one. If anyone is on Facebook and wants to join my reader group, it is Harlow's Harlots. And then I do have an author group. I'm pretty like precious about it because I didn't want it to get too big. But if an author really wants to join, please message me on Facebook. You won't be able to find it because I keep it hidden. But I will arrange to send an invitation link to any of your viewers who want to join.
Incredible. And what's coming up?
So another small town series. I'm currently planning a new series, probably 4 books. It'll be centered around a family in a small town, but that's pretty much all I know. I'm right now I'm lining up the tropes for each book and seeing, which one is speaking loudest to me to start with. It's probably a single dad. Yeah. So probably early spring, maybe. That will be book 1 will be out.
Incredible. Well, watch this space. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for coming on today. I need to hurry off and listen to the rest of Ignite now.
Yeah, it's a nice way to spend a day.
It really is. Well, have a good one, guys, and we'll see you back next week. Bye, guys.